enough of the amateur hour cinematic intros. I'm not good at that stuff at all. No, today I just wanted to talk about the lens in question, the Zeiss Touit 32 1.8 from Zeiss. It's an interesting one because at the moment there seems to be a bit of news around Zeiss as to whether they're going to stay within the market or not for us photographers. I think the cinema side of things, they're safe, they're still going to produce lenses, but I don't know if there's any truth to these rumors floating around that Zeiss are going to pull out. But either way, I thought it was a good opportunity to actually just talk about this lens in question. It's a curious one because it seems to be something that just continually comes up in conversation, or lack of rather, that members continually ask for advice for a 30mm something for Fuji, and nobody ever mentions this lens, and I find it really interesting. I don't know if it's because some people think that this is a manual focus lens, and I've had that. I've been in Fuji X Mount system groups where it's autofocus lenses only, so things like Samyang and Viltrox and things like that, and you post a picture taken with this lens and somebody says, excuse me, this is autofocus only lenses, and they don't realize that this lens has autofocus. So I'm not entirely sure why so many Fuji people seem to be unaware of this lens. In fact, I think Fuji Rumors recently, they released a poll, and they asked for people just to say which lenses you owned. It was a simple poll, and about 4,000 people we had. This lens had about 70 owners, and interestingly at number 2 we had the XF35 1.4, the older lens from Fuji, which many people love for its character, which is probably most likely true. And nowadays we have a lot of choice for a good 30mm lens from Fuji, and we have the new 33 1.4 as well. So I'm not saying that this lens is better than any of those other lenses, not at all. It's just fascinating to me that it just completely gets nerfed out of the conversation. Nobody talks about it, and I'm not entirely sure why that is. I've discovered this lens pretty quickly after discovering Fuji. It was one of the first lenses I bought with the X-T4. However, I did buy it used. I think brand new this lens goes for quite a lot. It goes for about $1,000, which is too much for what it's trying to do in 2023. But if you could find this lens, secondhand used market, I think even $500, which is what I paid for this lens, Australian dollars. That's quite a bargain, because it does have actually really quite interesting characteristics that we're going to get into in this video. So this isn't going to be so much a video about lens score charts and things like that. We're going to be just like sort of testing this camera in terms of things like autofocus, how well it's doing on something like the XH2S. But we're actually just going to look at the traits of this lens. We're going to talk about things like the sharpness, the unique bokeh that it has, things like the Zeiss pop and things like that. So that's what we're going to do mainly in this video, and I just wanted to basically just give it some love, because it seems to just not get much love. And fitted to a small little body like the XT32, it's just an absolutely lovely light and compact, really nice combination lens, a nice kind of 50mm equivalent, with really excellent characteristics that I think should be talked about a little bit more. I find that a lot of in this day and age, there's a lot of interesting characteristics for lenses, but they all seem to fall under the manual focus lenses. It's just a little bit frustrating. A lot of the autofocus lenses that are on the market for all across brands right now, they tend to be more clinically rendering, where they've got absolutely amazingly sharp corners at wide open, and a lot of people don't need that. And we could have smaller lenses, more compact, maybe a little bit less expensive, if we just had a company who was willing to do it and put autofocus in it. But instead we've got companies like Light Lens Labs making replicas of really fantastic rendering lenses, but again we're stuck with manual focus. So I'm not saying that that's what this lens is. It's not a Light Lens Lab Speed Panchos 2 kind of rendering, but it does have some interesting rendering characteristics that I think you won't find on other Fuji lenses. With autofocus, I think makes it really quite unique and should get your attention. So that's what we're going to do in this video. We'll delve right into that now, and we'll get on with some of the characteristics. So we'll start off talking about the bokeh of this lens, or bokeh, I'm not sure how you pronounce it, but it's probably this lens's biggest sort of identifiable characteristic. Okay, so I'll just draw in to this image part here, and you can see what I'm talking about. So just in this background here, we have all these specular highlights, and we're getting what's called that kind of soap ring bubble bokeh effect, where the lines on the outside are really quite defined and show that kind of circular pattern. And you know, it's a personal preference. It's a taste. Some people don't like it. I personally do like it. I think it's really interesting, and it makes for shots like this just make it a little bit more magical and sparkly, if you like. So yeah, we'll just have a look at a couple more examples here. The next one here, this is just nothing too exciting, just my washing basket with some condensation on the morning. But again, all these kind of specular highlights of that kind of early morning sun on the trees behind, just I find really pleasing. And it's one of those images where I find that kind of bokeh supportive rather than detrimental to the shot. Not that this is a particularly interesting shot. Here's a little shot of my little one a few years back, and yeah, just sort of sitting down on the rocky, and we can see these kind of specular bokeh ball highlights again kind of coming through. It's interesting to note that you got to get that kind of light just right to sort of see that ring. Too strong and it's just going to be just kind of like blown out, basically white balls, but somewhere in between where you still got some highlight detail there in the bokeh, I think it's quite nice. This shot here, from beautiful and cute to ugly or shocking. Not that you're ugly, Nathan. We've got a shot here, and again we're just seeing my friend Nathan in his cosplay outfit, and we just got that kind of, again, that kind of soap ring bokeh bubble effect around him, which is really quite interesting and different. And nothing fancy, again, a kind of dusk shot of the bokeh, but I did want to just mention here that it can get a little bit too crazy, a little bit too chaotic at times, and we will see some chromatic aberrations with this lens, and we'll talk about that later. You can see that kind of greenness tint to the bokeh balls there, but obviously when you pull back you can't really notice it too much. Again, a little cat pick, and this one showing again some of that kind of soap ring bubble bokeh in the background. This is shot again about f1.8 wide open, so you can tell it's plenty good image quality at a reasonable distance to the lens here. This isn't as close as it can go, but yeah, for a full body little cat pick like this, not a problem at all. And this one here, yeah, so the focus is down here on the flower, and just up in this corner here, this kind of bokeh here is starting to remind me of one of my other favorite lenses, which is the Takuma 50mm 1.48 element, and I'll just show you an example of that. So that's what this image was taken with. So this is not the Zeiss Touit, this image, but the vintage M42 Takuma. But you can see how that kind of, like, the way that the bokeh presents itself here has that kind of soap ring effect as well on this lens. It's not quite as pronounced as it is on the Zeiss, but you can see that they kind of lend into themselves a little bit similar. But I wanted to just finish off with this image here for bokeh. This is actually not a Zeiss Touit shot. This is the XF90 f2, which is another favorite lens of mine. And we can still see down here, we are seeing some of that soap ring bubble effect. So it's not that it's something that is completely unique to the Zeiss Touit. I'm just saying it is kind of strong and pronounced with that lens. But you do get it occasionally with some other lenses from Fuji. So yeah, that kind of concludes the bokeh. Let's have a look now and go into the pop, or the fall off, as you say. So this image again, we're just a kind of, not boring image, but it's just, you know, a standard image I take at event work. This shot wide open at f1.8. We're obviously focused here on these the bottles on the table, and I just like the way it renders and the fall off from what's in focus to out of focus and just up, and we still have that kind of soap ring bubble bokeh kind of happening at the top there. But I just appreciate just how it is rendering that fall off. I think it's very smooth, it's very gradual, and it does provide a kind of pop to what is in focus without relying on wide open kind of subject isolation that you get of those faster aperture lenses like 1.4s and 1.2s. It's a different look, and like I said, I feel like it's a look that Fuji don't always have natively to their lineup. Again, this shot here is just a workshop on a job, and we've got this machine here in focus. And again, everything else in the factory has context. It's not blurred out to smithereens because I want to have that context. But at the same time, there is a nice little pop there with that Zeiss Touit, enabling you to still isolate what's in focus whilst, giving context to the background of the image. Similar shot here for an art center I was shooting at. This one in particular, I've played around with the colors obviously, but this one has almost a kind of medium format look, I find, to the image, where the chairs are really popping out in a kind of medium format vibe. And even one of my decrepit mailbox that's doing even worse now. But again, the Bokeh is not completely blown out and smooth. It's still context. You can tell there's trees here. It's almost painterly at times. But yeah, it's relying on subject isolation in a different way. I think enough about that. And lastly, we're just going to sort of touch on sharpness. And so here we have an image here. The focus is obviously over here, and I hope you can see that, and that's coming through. It's fairly sharp there, wide open at f1.8. Very narrow depth of field, but it's managing that quite nicely. Again here, we're at 1.4, I believe, and we've got these, the detail coming out here. I think we're getting a bit pixelated there. If I just pull back a little bit, it should be okay. Yeah, about there. Should be good for video. Again, I don't know how this is going to translate to YouTube, but what I will do is provide these images up on my OneDrive, and you can go and have a look at them if you like to inspect yourself. Obviously, I've rendered them the way I wanted to and stuff like that. I actually feel as though this lens does particularly well with monochrome work. You can just, avoid the kind of chromatic aberration issue that it can have. And again, this is a good demonstration of the sharpness of this lens. This is at its minimum close focus distance. So you can tell there, this was on the Fuji X-H2S where it has eye detection. I actually managed to nail that kind of eye part. Sometimes it gets confused and it will focus, down here somewhere. It's actually kind of got the iris and the pupil in focus in this shot. On that same focal plane here, we have some of these hairs in focus as well. But what you will notice down here is, again, that kind of chromatic aberration. These are really extreme sort of, positions to be in with, where you got black on white and bokeh as well. So you'll notice it doesn't feel like it's as pronounced on some of the sharper. It's more in the out of focus areas. It can happen, just like I showed before. But we'll get into that in a minute. So just following on here with the chromatic aberration, we're back in Lightroom with this example of the cat minimum focus distance, and which is 30 centimeters, if I didn't already say. So here we have, we're just bringing it down to the whisker area. That was the trouble area. And we can see there's quite a bit of chromatic aberration of the green variety and that's what you see. I haven't really seen it much in the purple. It's more on that green sort of channel. So if we come down here and adjust this slider, and we're going to take out the green, and you can see it's done something, but not a lot. You can see some of it's gone, but what we really need to do is extend those values because it's right in the middle, and it's actually quite a lot of the green and it's quite a lot of the blue. And now we should start to see that kind of fading away. Yeah. So if I hold this down, we can see the before. We can see that kind of green and blue tinge. And after, it's kind of mostly got rid of it. Anymore, I would just take a brush and start, desaturating some of those troubled areas. And you can kind of see it doesn't really make too much of a difference, correcting that. But that's quite an extreme, like I said, an extreme example of it, of where I might tackle that kind of chromatic aberration. And you can see it already had it ticked, but it didn't really do much. I quite often find that's the case. It does have lens profile correction is built in with this, so you can turn that on or off natively within Lightroom. I sometimes actually quite like it off for certain images. It can even give a little bit more of a pop. It just depends on subject matter. You can tweak the distortion how you like. If you want to leave it off a little bit and then go in here and just kind of pull it back a little bit, and crop accordingly. But yeah, that's chromatic aberrations for this lens done. Okay, so what I thought we'd do here is just I hooked up the camera up to my computer so you could just get an idea of the actual autofocus and mechanism of the camera, tracking the eye and things like that. And then I took some photos under this mode, and then we're gonna have a look at the images afterwards and just see what kind of percentage keeper rate we're getting here, for whether things are in focus or not. And then we'll have a look at video in a little bit. For now, this is still, so let's just let it play. So apologies with all the blinking. This is just actually how I have my camera set up. I tend to have the rule of thirds as well. Framing helps me at times. But that's a shot taken there. You'll see some more shots getting taken in a minute. Now they're all being taken. So you can see I'm coming in closer and then doing a few shots and I'm stopping. So that was an idea of just coming in to the person's face, or if they were coming towards me, to kind of mimic that. Here I'm just sort of demonstrating how well it's, the camera and the lens together. Still seeing the face. It's not losing the face, even if it's far left or right of frame. It's absolutely fine. We'll do some more shots in a minute, I think. There we go, some more shots. And now I'm pulling away, and now I'm coming back in again. So I just wanted to get, an idea, how well it's doing in that regard. So let's just have a look at the actual images. I'll bring them up now. So these are obviously just completely straight out camera, nothing fancy. So first one there, slightly soft in my opinion. We could do a bit sharper than this. Let's just have it keep going. I'll do it. Just try and do this fairly quickly, so it's not too boring for you. I think this is looking a little bit sharper. Yeah, we can see the detail on the iris there is a little bit better, and those eyelashes there. It's probably as good as it's going to be. Again, this is like wide open f1.8. Just keep going. You get an idea. I'm coming in now. That one looked a bit soft. See that one? So kind of not in focus there. And then the next one looks a bit better. We can start to see the detailed, the hard line of the pupil there in the iris. So quite a big difference between that one and that one. Yeah, and you get the idea. That one's soft. That one's quite fairly sharp. You can even see sort of the strands of hair here, over here. I think the focus was on this eye here. This one's softish still. That one, the eye is really quite soft, but the strand of hair in front of it is in focus. Could just be the camera rather than the lens, but it won't be long till it probably has that eye back in focus. Yeah, this one looks, now the strand of hair is out of focus and the eye is back to being in focus. This eyelash is falling off. I need to fix that. But yeah, you get the idea. So I've pushed in, some are soft. It's a mixed bag, I always, with this camera in general, I tend to spam the shutter quite a lot in electronic shutter mode, because this can happen with other lenses as well. Where that camera has eye autofocus is a bit questionable at times, so it's better to have a few more shots. This one, different side of the subject now. I think I pull away. Yep, these all seem fairly okay. That one's a bit soft there. This one seems a bit sharper maybe, but yeah. It is what it is. And whether that's a good enough autofocus for you is up to you. Certainly, I wouldn't have any problems using this lens for kind of slow, controlled posing work. But any kind of action, I have actually done a test with my kids running up and down a lawn. I compared the results of this lens with the XF50 F2, which is very good. I think this one came out for me about 67% keeper rate, whereas I was getting about 78, 80% with the XF52 under the same kind of conditions. So it's definitely not as good. It does wobble and hunt a little bit, and you will get some shots that are quite off, like that one there. I see it's quite out of focus on the eye. So yeah, just be aware of it. But it does end up kind of catching it again shortly after. So big difference between that and this. Yeah. Not sure what else to say. That'll do for now. I'll have a look at video autofocus in a bit. Alright, for this segment, I'm just going to do a quick autofocus test. Just recording the audio from the camera, so maybe you can actually hear the autofocus of the lens itself as it's whirring. So let's just see how it works.
Yeah, it does okay. Like I say, I would do talking headshots with this lens, no problems. Tracking this eye at the moment. Tracking this eye now. Very good.
Okay, we'll keep this one quite brief because I don't really want to repeat myself. We'll talk about the build quality. It is pretty atrocious, to be honest. It's one of the worst lenses I've ever had for build quality. It has an aperture ring. It is clicky, as you can see. It has no A lock settings for the A. It has this kind of rubber material for the focus ring and aperture, which is garbage, as you can see. It's just kind of pulling away there. And I've seen this happen on other people's Touit 32s as well. The focus ring is so bad that there is no real tactile feedback when using it as to whether you're touching the lens body or the focus ring itself. It's really truly awful. It has a 52mm filter thread and it has electronic contacts on the back to pass all that XF. It is just plastic. It is not weather sealed. It is pretty light and rubbish in that respect. All the good stuff is in the middle of the optics in the lens. It has a lens hood which is deep and recessed, and it is reverse mountable if you want to keep it for like traveling. I also honestly don't use the lens hood that much. I find it only necessary for really difficult light. And really that's all there is to say about this particular lens. I just felt like it was noteworthy to talk about just due to its interesting characteristics with autofocus, which seems to be really rare in this day and age. If you've got any questions, please feel free to leave them below. Until next time, hopefully I've got something quite interesting coming in the mail that I'd like to talk about in the near future. Until then, yeah, hope you stay safe and well, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers, bye.